Senator, thank you. Senator Gravel, same question. Other than Iraq, three most important enemies to the United States.
We have no important enemies. What we need to do is begin to deal with the rest of the world as equals, and we don't do that. We spend more as a nation on defense than all the rest of the world put together. Who are we afraid of? Who are you afraid of? I mean, it is unbelievable. The military-industrial complex not only controls our government, lock, stock, and barrel, but they control our culture.
Senator Edwards, same question. Other
Okay,
than
that's
Iraq,
enough for you.
three most...
I hate your fucking guts, but I love you all so much. Sometimes you make me overcome with greed, but you're everything I need.
I got higher education for you, vaccinations for you, and all kinds of experimental medications for you. I got professors and doctors, indoctrinated kids, and media outfits to tell you just how great it is. We concentrated it, now you must depend upon banking institutions integrated with the Pentagon. It's been said we spread malice and greed, but the benefits are limitless. We got everything you need. While you were sleeping, we came and took it all away. Yeah, you can bet the farm on that. You never saw us creeping, and that's how it is gonna stay. That's why they say, that's why they say, that's why they say.
Military-industrial complex.
I hate your fucking guts.
That's what they say.
Welcome to UCY Radio. This is Chris J, and unfortunately, I have to start off the show with saying that we are suffering some technical difficulties outside the studio right now, and so we do not have USS Liberty survivors waiting right now. So the show, unfortunately, is just me because we just have me in the studio, and we're just going to continue the show. We're going to try to get somebody to fix the problems right now. I'm sorry that I'm a little bit multitasking here, trying to get the show on. I doubt that will be postponed more than 20 minutes. I know the first show we ever did, we had snafu, and it's not the same thing as the last time, but no, it's not the same problem as last time, where we had on June 7th on my very inaugural show. That was a very good show to do. We were talking about the it's not even coming to me. Too multitasking, too stressed out right now, thinking what's to do with this, shuffling around the studio here with Skype. But yeah, we did the show last week about Syria, Venezuela, and Ukraine. That went very smoothly. The week before that, we were talking about Israel, this would be the topic of the day, and we're supposed to have, in 20 minutes just to introduce the interview. Supposed to be the survivors of USS Liberty. Ronald Kukal, who was injured after he attacked Israel on USS Liberty on June 8, 1967. So it was Phil Torney who wrote. Phil Torney wrote the book "What I Saw That Day." It's a pretty famous book, actually, and he's gained some fame for that, and he's been on some pretty well-known interviews. And then we have our other guest, Joe Lentini, who also was on that boat. I haven't asked him, actually, if he was wounded or not. That might be a good interview question when the interview starts. Sorry, we, we're dealing with we're dealing with it right now. Okay. It was a snafu, and I'm sorry. The multitasking. We're trying to figure this out. Anyways, we'll be back in 5 minutes. Sorry for going on dead air. Okay, we're back. This is Chris J. I apologize for the technical problems and I'd like to announce a new start time for the show. Since technology sometimes just doesn't work out for you, and sometimes it freezes on you. Sometimes it just comes back to bite you in the ass. And right now, that's what's happening. Well, problem. Okay.
That's good, yeah.
Okay, everyone, we're back online. We have finally have one of the USS Liberty survivors in the studio finally with us after 20 minutes, I know, and we had major technical difficulties, but finally the technical difficulties are over. The show is finally commenced, and we have Ronald Kukal. He survived USS Liberty attack by Israel. I think that's automated.
Yeah, that was an automated intro song. We're sorry about that. People keep trying to call me to my Skype instead of the show Skype. I believe they're Ron's friends or other survivors. We got to figure out a way for UC Right Radio to let them in.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen, Al. I'm sorry that we haven't had all three of the guests in, but all that's going to happen is that when they call, I think you click on their names and then it'll say add person to current call you're in, or you drag and drop the current call into this call, and then they'll bring Joe and Phil.
Okay, look, somebody's calling me right now. I'm going to add the group call. Maybe that's what I did wrong. Hold on. Okay, I believe the second guest
we have
is
somebody else.
here.
Hey, who's there?
This is George Sokol.
So
Did you
glad
get
you
Ron
came
and
on,
Phil?
sir. We're sorry about the technical difficulties. We have Ron and we have George on the line right now.
Oh, I didn't even expect Ron and George to call in. Is it? I mean, not Ron. I was thinking Don, but I wasn't George.
Yeah, George Sokol is off the USS America. I asked him to call in because he has a very good thing to add to our story.
We got a third guest right now on there. Hello, sir. Please state your name.
Yeah, Phil Turney.
Oh, yeah, that's the big guest. Yeah, that's the one who wrote What I Saw That Day, and I looked into your book a little bit and some of the interviews you had done. So,
yeah, I'm a fellow author myself. I've written 2 books. It's so good to have you on. This is your co-host, Al Suarez. I'm here with Chris and a couple other gentlemen.
I'm the main host, Chris J, of this show, Voice of Rebellion Radio, and that means we only have one more person that we were expecting. So that I'm wondering what Joe Lentini.
I just called Joe and I told him to call in about 2 minutes.
Great.
All right. Well, we can start this show by I'll just briefly explain. Because some people are clueless, unfortunately, because the mainstream media heavily ignores this event that happened.
Hey, Chris, I got to ask you something.
Yes.
Are you the fellow that got the crap kicked out of him for no reason?
Wait, what?
I don't think he is. No.
You weren't beat up, were you?
I wasn't beat up. I'm wondering where you're getting this from.
Well, the Zionists beat up people all the time.
Yeah, I know that, but I was like...
Okay. Well, listen, I'll just hang on and do whatever you got to do, and I'll be here.
Well, yeah, I was just going to briefly explain, because this is really the start of the show now. I mean, the show, technically started 25 minutes ago, but we had, our computer froze that had the main Skype studio, and, we had to pretty much restart the call. We have one more person. That is
I think Joe just got in. Is that Joe?
Yeah, that's Joe.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. Sorry about the technical
now
difficulties.
We have everybody. We have everybody on the show. But now, when I announce the names of tonight's show, we have Ron Kukal, who was on USS Liberty and he was actually injured on the USS Liberty, along with Phil Torney, was also one wounded on USS Liberty. Joe Lentini was with them on USS Liberty, and George, what was the last name? Because I didn't even meet you on Facebook.
Sokol, S-O-K-O-L.
What was that again? It was kind of quiet.
S-O-K-O-L, Sokol.
Sokol, okay. George Sokol is also on the show. So I know that's actually, we have an unexpected guest that came on the show, so that actually it makes it. I guess that kind of erases some of the problems on the technical difficulties, because we only said there was going to be 3 guests, and now we actually ended up with a better one, 4 guests today, and we have Phil Torney, who wrote What I Saw That Day, which is quite a common book on the truth movement. Like, I've seen it come up before. I've heard the name well before actually meeting Phil Torney via Ron on Facebook, and Phil Torney has done many interviews, radio interviews. In fact, they've all recently gotten into attention. After many years the mainstream media ignoring them, they still have the mainstream media ignoring them. But finally, this alternative media, like I usually talk about on Voice of Rebellion Radio, is so important to getting the truth of what really goes on in the world out. And the alternative media has offered them to tell their story and tell this horrific event that happened. And the mainstream media, of course, tried to cover up the fact that what it looks like was a deliberate attack. It was not a mistake. It was covered up, and there was actually Lyndon B. Johnson, the traitor, had sent a nuclear equipped plane to the area, expecting that he was in on what looks to be, from what I've read, a false flag to get the United States engaged in a potentially nuclear war with Egypt, who Israel was fighting in the 6-Day War of 1967. But my first question I'm going to ask is, what is your account of what this really was politically? Was this a false flag? Was this just a mistake? And I already think I know the answer, but I'm just going to go, one by one. First to Ronald, then somebody else can talk. But Ron, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, there's no doubt it was a false flag. But can I ask you something really quick here, Chris? What really works well for us, and I've worked for a lot of years with Phil on the same radio station. Phil was topside. He saw a lot of the stuff that went on in the mornings. He saw a lot of the attack topside. And when he starts out, he tells the story, and then I'll pick up from there on in. And now we got the added attraction of Joe Lentini on there, who knows a lot about this also. And then we got the George Sokol people.
Just to let you know, a new guest is on the air.
Which even adds more to the story.
Just to let you guys know, a new guest has just come on the air.
No kidding. Wow.
Wait, so somebody else is on the air now. It doesn't pop
that
up
might be
officially.
Don Peg. That might be Don Peg.
Yeah, I had called in a little while ago and I got dropped, so I'm just now calling back.
Yeah, we're sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. Welcome to the show.
So anyway, so I'm here.
If that's the better thing, Ron, about how this should go, and just a refresh, since somebody just came into the show right now, bringing the total amount of people right now in this crowded studio to 7. But I'll tell everybody right now what we're talking about is what is the account that we believe is the truth about the USS Liberty. Was it, a mistake, which I'm, convinced it wasn't, a deliberate attack, a false flag to draw in the United States and to attack Egypt? And but Ron said that since you guys have done radio shows and it works so well the other way, we're having Phil talk first. I guess Phil can talk first and tell his story about what he saw, and then go on to the other guests.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Chris. And I know that you don't have a lot of time, and we could speak for 24 hours straight on this particular act of war crimes put upon us by the Zionist State of Israel. But I wanted to give special thanks to, of course, Ron and Joe Lentini and my dear friend Don Pagler, and of course George Sokol for pushing this and getting the word out. But I was just thinking as I was sitting here, how many men that you know of that survived a torpedo blast and were around to talk about it, especially the men that were down below decks. Joe Lentini was there, and he got a face of torpedo right in front of him, and Ron hit the deck. But God bless them, they're here and they're here to tell their story. And I also want to add, we are not here to bash Jews or anything like that, but it is what it is. It just is what it is, and we're not.
Wasn't one of the initial guests actually Jewish? He was also a survivor.
Pardon me?
Wasn't one of the survivors that was originally going to come on? Wasn't he himself Jewish?
Yeah, Larry is.
Yeah.
Larry's supposed to come on the
Larry's
show.
still on.
Yeah, but gentlemen, it's not a religious issue. It has nothing to do with religion. We were overflown the day before the attack by clearly marked Israeli aircraft. So low that our crew waved to the pilot and the pilots waved back. They were slow-flying reconnaissance aircraft, and it's documented. Every time we had an overflight, we sent a situation report to Washington. Those records, those messages are in the files. They're documents. It's true. You can't
Do you think
deny
Johnson
it.
planned this? Johnson and the Israelis together planned this as a false flag?
Who can say? We weren't there. We were sitting ducks. We tracked aircraft coming from what we thought was an Israel port on the 8th of June. And we tracked surface craft and high-speed aircraft passing over on our radar that we had in 1967, which was not as good as today's. When those aircrafts came close to the ship, because of where we thought they were and what we thought they were, we called photographer to the bridge. And the ship's photographer, another CT, went up on the bridge, and these jets came in, circled half around our ship, and came straight down the center line of the ship. And as the photographer was focusing on the front jet, the guy opened fire. And one of the slugs went right down the telephoto lens the man had on his camera and knocked him out. But he wasn't hurt. He woke up and he crawled inside and got his wits about him and went to a general quarters station. And later they gave him the telephoto lens. I've got a picture of him holding it. The first jets that came in, at the speed they came in, they hit every watertight hatch topside. They hit all 4 machine gun mounts with cannon and rockets. They tore the bridge up. They ended up killing the executive officers, severely wounding the captain, and blowing the helmsman to pieces. They hit every life raft. They hit the only gas drum on board. They hit the boats that would have helped get us off that ship. Destroyed them. They shot our flag down 4 or 5 times. They knew who we were, and the jets that came in were unmarked at a time when Israel had won the war. They just hadn't taken the Palestinian land yet, so they didn't want to end it, and they were trying to get us to go into Egypt. Lyndon Johnson wanted to go to Egypt. Ours wouldn't let him because of Vietnam. There was no false flag. They knew who we were. In fact, in years past, records have come out from NSA where the pilots in the Israeli aircraft called in a viewing of an American flag, believe it's an American ship, and they were told by their command, it's not, it's an Arab ship, it's been shelling our people, sink them, repeatedly, sink them. The pilots didn't know who we were. They thought they did, and they were told that no, this is an enemy ship, sink it. When they were
now we have who's that on that just called in?
It's George Sokol again.
Okay, so George Sokol's back on live. Now we have to add Ron to the call, and then we're gonna bring in, and then the other ones are gonna have to call in. That's Joe, Phil, and
I'm looking up Ron right now.
because he has the Skype, so that's easier. And the other ones have to call in. You have to accept their calls. But
okay, we got three people now in the studio.
Hey, guys.
Me, Chris. Go ahead, guys.
Hey,
but
this is
Bill
Joe.
was in the middle of talking about what he saw that day, about his account on the USS Liberty before we had another round of technical
Can anybody hear me?
difficulties.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I can
Continue
hear
with
you.
your story. This is Joe.
Because I apparently got cut off, and I really covered it from start to finish. Everything that the Israelis said about the attack on the USS Liberty was bogus. Every bit of their story. There was never anybody shelling their Sinai position from the sea. They never even bothered to look for anybody who was shelling their precious position at the Sinai. The only weapons that the Liberty had were .450 caliber machine guns for repel boarders, and the Israelis never did say, and they couldn't say that they didn't see them because they hit each one of them with 2 rockets. The ship they said they thought we were was in port at the time. It was an Egyptian smaller vessel than ours and had no guns whatsoever. So even if we were that ship, we could not have been the ship shelling from the sea, which never took place in the first place. Everything they ever said was bogus. And it's easily proven. It's not a claim. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It's not a religious issue. It's a political and military issue. And anybody that believed the story to begin with, it doesn't take but a few minutes of searching with the internet to determine that every single piece of their story falls apart.
So what do you think was the motive behind it, sir?
At this end, looking backwards, I think it was twofold. Israel had tried to expand its borders on numerous occasions and been told to sit down and maintain the status quo. Somebody decided this time we're going to take it, we're not going to ask, and we'll spend the next 20, 30, 40 years talking about giving it back, which is exactly what they did. And from this end, looking backwards, Lyndon Johnson wanted an excuse to go into Egypt. He needed an excuse to go to Egypt. Congress wouldn't let him do it. He went to Congress the way anybody dealing with war, according to our Constitution, is supposed to do. He did it back then. Believe it or not, the president was actually adhering to the Constitution. Having said that, he was turned down. You're in Vietnam, we're not going to be on 2 fronts. No, they turned him down. If our ship had been sunk, and I think the 3 of us would all agree we came within one message of being sunk without word getting out, I really believe that there would have been some evidence given to the world that Egypt or an Arab state had sunk us. Most likely it would have been some kind of an Egypt vessel or plane that they captured, and the wreckage would have somehow gotten near where we were, and they would have blamed them. Then Lyndon would have gone to Congress. Congress would have said, remember the Liberty. Go kick those people's butt over there in Egypt. And they would have bombed Egypt. But it didn't happen that way because we got one message out. In fact, the man that really was instrumental in doing that spent years and years and years and finally was recognized with a Silver Star for climbing an antenna that had been shot up, and as these jets were coming over, running a wire so that the radioman could get a voice message out. It was the only message. And Israel, by the way, if you check the timeline carefully, you'll find that they recognized that they had made a quote-quote mistake in attacking us just about the time that the 6th Fleet was going into general quarters and launching aircraft.
We have
Wait,
another
somebody else
guest on, just
on
let everybody know.
on
Go
the
ahead.
airwaves right now. Who's
Right.
that?
Hello?
These are things that people cannot accuse us of making up because they are documented by the U.S., by other countries, and by Israel itself.
Yes, and it's very evident that something was going on towards the end of a false flag, especially at that time this is the time of the 6 Days War. And, right after the end of this war, Israel dramatically expanded its borders into Palestinian territory that they already were. If you ask me, Israel is not entitled to any of the land that is there. It's Palestine's land. Palestine
if someone
is Palestine.
came into this
it will
country,
be Palestine again one day.
No. If someone came into your town and walked up to your farm and said, "We're taking this," and it had been in your family for hundreds of years, you wouldn't be happy camper either. They were being sued for peace. That is, Israel, the Arab states were suing for peace before June the 8th. But it didn't end until considerably after, because Israel had not taken the Palestinian land yet. And Moshe Dayan, in his writings before he died, pretty much said that the whole thing on that 6-day war was about power and land. It wasn't for the state of Israel. It was power and land. And one of the major goals of that 6-day war was to expand their borders, which they did, even though prior to that, every time they'd asked about expanding their border, the U.S. and, I guess, UN had pretty well said, maintain the status quo. We'll cut back on our money going to you if you step out of line. This time somebody decided, I'll take the keys to the car and argue about giving them back later. They've been arguing about and discussing giving back that Palestinian land ever since the 8th of June. And it's that land that I think could draw us into a nuclear war, because whether they want to admit it or not, Israel has nuclear capability and has for a long time.
Well, actually, JFK tried to stop Israel from having a nuclear weapons program and was sending monitors, but you know what happened on November 22nd, 1963, and LBJ, of course, had a way softer position on Israel, as shown by what happened on the day of the USS Liberty attack.
He expanded the Vietnam War, which JFK wanted to pull back from.
Yeah. And all that stuff's documented. It's great in hindsight, but you can see a whole lot clearer from this end of the telescope.
Diane was asked by the BBC, was the Golan Heights a security concern? And he smiled at the camera and he goes, "No, it was pure greed. I could see it in their eyes." And that was broadcast on the BBC.
Who said that?
Talking
about it was pure greed. Who was that?
Talk about it's funny though. It's like you talk about how they were arguing for the last 5 decades practically about that 67 land that was stolen. But the funny thing is that the United States never really cut back the aid that they give to Israel. In fact, they have
of course they didn't.
Expanded it. Now they have $15 billion a year annually is going to Israel. Let me ask you, what's going to Detroit? Nothing. People are going to sell water in Detroit, and they don't give them anything.
Israel, when they hit us, volunteered to pay damages to the wounded, the dead, and for the ship. They had to have it pried out of them. And if you know how they say, follow the money, you go look at the money that was paid that was just a pittance of what that ship cost to outfit. And I'm sure, without too much trouble, you could nail that money that this country got for that ship, and that those of us who were injured and the families of the dead, the checks they got, that money tracks right back to the United States. It was a small amount of the money we were given to Israel, but they said, well, okay, we get this much, we'll give you 10% back here. Sure, we'll pay for the ship if you're going to...
supporting Israel.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with the case of Rachel Corrie?
The sound on your mic is really
Oh, I'm sorry. I asked if you're familiar with the case of Rachel Corrie.
Rachel Corrie? No.
She was an American citizen. I'm sure some of you heard of her. She was an American citizen bulldozed to death by Israel in Gaza in 2003.
Yeah, she was from Oregon.
Yeah, so once
Yes,
again,
Rachel.
they got away with murder against American citizens and continue to get support. And in the flotilla, I believe one of the survivors also was in the flotilla that was attacked in international waters where an American citizen was killed. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, he's there right now.
Wait,
Joe
which
Meadows.
one was on the flotilla?
Joe Meadows.
Yeah, Joe Metters.
Yeah.
It's an honor, sir. I've been in touch with a lot of people that were on that flotilla. Ken O'Keefe, the Irishman, his name escapes me right now, but I've been in touch with some people like, they had Code Pink that have gone on these flotillas. I've been in touch with, in the past few years, people that were on that flotilla, and it wasn't just Turks. It was people from all over the world. And I think it took a lot of bravery on your part to attend that, and it's an honor to have you on here.
I got to tell you one thing that you might find interesting, at least on a personal note. At the time the ship was hit, I was part of the classified job of that ship. Had a clearance, had a very high clearance. And when you get out of the military, one of the normal things for somebody that's in that kind of a position, or when you get out of the federal government, if you're in a high, you've got a high clearance with code words stacked after them, you are debriefed. That means you sit down with some very tough folks, and they tell you who you can and can't talk to, what you can and can't say, what countries you can and can't go to without special permission. There's a whole series of things. And a lot of our guys, both the ones that were in the naval intelligence side of the ship, as well as the crew, were told not to talk about anything. They were told by various peoples, all the way up to and including an admiral. You don't dare talk about this. We're not going to discuss it. Somewhere in the scheme of things, they forgot little old me. And so in June of '67, between going from hospital to hospital and ultimately becoming a Navy instructor, and then when the Pueblo was taken, I got fed up with the, we'll put you out there and we'll protect you, and then they put you out there all right, but they don't protect you. So I asked if I qualified for a medical, and I was out. And I have never, ever been debriefed or told not to say anything. Now, there's some things I won't talk about even today because I know that it's still classified. But as far as the USS Liberty and the attack by the Israelis, don't have a problem. Not one problem, because I don't relate with the other guys that had all that arm up behind their back kind of stuff done to them. They missed me. I never signed anything. I was never asked to. And that just struck me as makes me unique in a way, apparently.
Yeah, I would think that was most of the people that were on the USS Liberty, that they would have, they would probably have you sworn to secrecy about most of the stuff that you guys had seen. So it is pretty cool to actually, get to hear the personal accounts from, because, I would almost think that wouldn't even be allowed because they cover that up so well in the media, because I'm a person that was politically aware from a pretty young age. I mean, I'm still a young age. I'm only 17, but I had known a lot in my teenage years, and this is one of the last things I learned. I had learned, stuff about, JFK. I'm probably more conspiratorial than maybe some of you, and probably some of you might surprise me, might be more conspiratorial than me. I'm not sure how you guys are, but it's like, stuff like JFK, 9/11, I question it. And not only question it, I have an idea of really what went on those days. But
the media in this country could have, with very little effort, determined what the Arab ship, the Egyptian ship was that they said they mistook us for. A routine reporter would have said, well, if you're responding to shelling from the sea, why would you attack a ship, even if you thought it was Egyptian, that had no weapons? Why would you do that? But nobody asked that question. That's a kind of an obvious question, I think. If your sole purpose for sending armed planes and armed torpedo boats out with orders to find and destroy, no question asked, not just try to capture it, no, sink it, with orders specifically to sink that ship, you would have thought some reporter would have said, wait a minute, the USS Liberty couldn't have been shelling. The ship they said they thought we were certainly couldn't have been shelling. Who was doing the shelling? Well, nobody was. It never happened.
Well,
but nobody, the media never picked up, made an effort to really figure out what really happened out there that day. They could have without ever talking to us. It would have been hard.
I just want to point out there that I think a couple of people that were originally on the show with us before we had the second round of technical problems have not yet called in. Ron's back with us. We have Joe for sure. We have George. Well, we have the other Joe. So let's see. That's 1, 2, 3. That's it. Wait. So where's Phil? And where's the? There was somebody else that called in earlier. I mean, we had 5 people on here, and somebody else came in, I think, for the first time on the second after the second round of technical difficulty. So I'm just telling them if they're out there waiting or something, call in, and we'll accept the calls, because it was cool having all of them in the studio, even though it's crowded a little bit, but. You know, having all these USS Liberty survivors is kind of surreal, because when I first heard about it, it was like, it's like I really want to learn more about this, and I never thought that would actually this historical event, I would actually be talking to actual people that had survived the attack, and this story needs to be told more to the American people, because people are insistent in the American society of today that Israel is our ally, Israel's our friend, but Israel is not an ally of the American people. It's an ally of the U.S. government, and both are parasitic to the American people. They work together, along with the Saudi government. I say screw George Bush's axis of evil, North Korea, Iran, Iraq. That's not the axis of evil to the American people. That might be the axis of evil to the United States government, but the American people, it's Tel Aviv, D.C., and Riyadh. So that's the real axis of evil.
I was always under the impression that to be an ally, you had to have a formal agreement between the two countries. And if that's true, Israel doesn't have an agreement formal with us like that. France does, but as far as I know, Israel doesn't. They're a friend. They're called friend. And I'm not sure about why we're spending all the money going over there.
Well, let's look at one thing about their influence in the United States government. Is that in the United States government, they have 15 senators have dual Israeli citizenship, and many more representatives. I think like 30 to 40 representatives have dual Israeli citizenship. So it's obviously, and there's AIPAC, of course, that's lobbying all these congressmen. So they have so much influence over our government.
But just strictly speaking, the three of us, about the ship and the attack, it was a clear day. There were no clouds. They saw good enough to do all the damage they did. Every watertight hatch, all 4 machine guns, the bridge, the gasoline drum. There was only one on board, and it took a direct hit right outside of Radio Central. There was a captain's gig, which is a boat that the officers would go ashore on when we anchored out. It got shot up. There was a whaleboat that the enlisted went to shore on when we anchored out. It was shot up. The life rafts were shot up. Every antenna on board had been shot and didn't work. The message that we got out was on a wire run up a damaged antenna, or we'd all be dead right now, all of us. People didn't want to ask, I guess. I grew up with a Jewish family, and when I got out of the hospital, I personally went over to see them, called them Aunt Will and Uncle Joe, and they wanted to know what happened, and I told them, and they were both of the Jewish faith, born in New York City, U.S. citizens only, never been out of the country at that time. And when I finished, Lillian looked at me and said, well, you don't think it was deliberate, do you? And I said, of course I do. It was it could not have been anything but deliberate. They knew their targets. They had overflown us. They took pictures of us. The pilots were obviously pre-briefed before they came at us. Yes. And she looked at me in 1967 and said, how could you say we would attack an American ship deliberately? 67, that was the attitude. Israel was not, and it was promoted that way. Israel was not separated, the state from the religion. They were both one and the same. And nobody in a synagogue criticized what was going on in Israel. Now you got pilots that won't fly the missions against people who have done no wrong. You got soldiers that won't shoot at people who have done no wrong and are innocent civilians. You got people back here who are taking issue and changing where they send their money. None of that was happening in 1967.
Yes, and unfortunately, that failure to separate between the identity of the religion, Judaism, and then Zionism, still in a way hasn't been differentiated, mostly with Christian Zionists, who will say, how could you criticize the Jews like that? And I'm saying, I'm not criticizing the Jews, I'm criticizing Zionism. In fact, many Jewish people, many even Orthodox Jewish, which means that they are the most devoted to that faith, have protested. In fact, at the time, from the very beginning, let's go all the way back to 1947, before when Israel was being proposed to the United Nations, the World Federation or something like that of rabbis. It's like there's like a world group of rabbis around the world. They told the UN that they cannot have a Jewish state because it is against the Torah. And this was, these are the experts of that religion. So it's actually the people that were more devoted to Judaism were actually against the state of Israel.
Well, it's a political movement started by secular people.
The people that started Zionism were not even Jewish practicing. They were
there was
Jewish
some
by blood.
rabbis,
and it was purely
the idea of... Hey, guys, doing shows like this to tell what really happened to the Liberty, getting that out there, is critical. I don't know how it is where any of you live, but here in Middle Tennessee, some of our biggest malls have kiosks throughout the malls. And a good many of them are run by Israeli young men and young women. And everyone I've ever talked to has been in the military or worked for the Mossad. And like I said, once you've been in the military, you're always in the military. It's like the mafia. And all of these people have heard of the Liberty. They're all in their 20s. They've heard of the attack on the Liberty, and they know that it was a mistake, an accident, and it was never done on purpose. They know that because that's what they've been told. And they know none of the facts, and they know none of the issues.
Yeah,
I have to ask you, you say you live in Middle Tennessee. I just wanted to get that out there, is that my grandparents and a few of my family members live in Middle Tennessee, and I just wanted to ask, is it like how I saw it, that most of the people there, I mean, it would be the definition of Christian Zionist control when it comes to the mindset, because when you go through there, over by Crossville, the radio station, and all like, we have to support our friends Israel and stuff like that, and they put propaganda ads on the radio. It's really heavy when you go over to Crossville or Cookville.
It is. God forbid you should talk about politics. Oh, my goodness gracious. But it just never ceases to amaze me. When I talk to these young people, some of them won't budge an inch. Some of them listen and say, well, you were there? I say, yeah, let me tell you about it. And they say, well, I'm going to research it some because we were told this. And what you've said is not what we were told. So some of them are willing to look at it and say, well, maybe they were lying to us. Wasn't it? Well, didn't we go to war in this country because of an attack on the Maine? Don't I remember in my history, remember the Maine? And don't I remember that in my lifetime, within the last 10 or 20 years, it came out that it was not foreigners jumping the Maine, it was our own people.
Wasn't the Maine used to justify the invasion of Cuba?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, that was with the Spanish-American War, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's called, and we did it, and it was because we thought, and we were told, this country was told, that that American vessel was attacked by others, and it was our own people. It would be like finding out that the CIA blew up the trade towers.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I think they'll admit it one day, just like 50 years, because I can already tell that nowadays, even if they did admit, I don't think too many people would be that angry. And then as time goes along, it's like what happens, the Gulf of Tonkin effect. Because the Gulf of Tonkin was admitted by the government in 2013 to have been indeed a non-existent event, but no one was angry about it because it had 5 decades have had passed. So I think the 9/11 is going to be the same thing one day. If the United States government hasn't been overthrown.
I don't doubt it, but by talking about the Liberty this many years after, but at least during the month of June, maybe there's one person out there, if there's just one, that has heard about it or never heard about it and wants to research. Because in today's world, you can find the facts yourself. I mean, it's easy enough
nowadays,
to do.
being ignorant is a choice.
Yeah.
We're in the age of information, yeah.
I mean, there's no
One thing
reason.
people don't. Oh.
You can find the false stories, but if you check the false stories, it's like checking something a politician says. Oh, a politician says it, it sounds real, but you do a little checking and you real quickly find that they're lying to you.
George, you had to say something?
Yeah, one thing people don't realize is the Liberty was set up long before she was even ordered to go there. According to the USS American newspaper, the America was involved in a 6-day war starting on the 15th of May. About the 29th of May, the press came on board the America. Half of them were shipped to USS Little Rock. At that point, the fleet was split. The commander of the 6th Fleet, Admiral Martins, and the USS Little Rock, the Davis, and the Massey were sent to Gibraltar. About the same time, we got the word that 20 Russian ships were coming down through the Bosphorus Straits from the Black Sea. On the 2nd of June, they showed up. Now, America should have been ready, for anything, and we weren't. We were playing show and tell with 3 Russian ships in our midst, swapping positions. When the attack came, and we got the word, it had to be transferred to us from the USS Saratoga because nobody heard it. With the Saratoga. The Saratoga.
Are you talking about Operation Cyanide when the Russian vessel showed up?
Well, yeah, it's all part of it. And we had a Russian ship. The ship number was PCE-160. That was right in our midst. And our helicopter pilot was taking pictures of it. It made a 90-degree turn, took off like a bat out of hell. Now, every aircraft carrier is supposed to have ready aircraft on the catapults ready to launch at a minute's notice. We were playing show and tell and sending the guys out for practice bombing. We had no ready aircraft. and we missed the first launch. Saratoga launched on her own, and Captain Joe Tully, in one of his writings, said he couldn't understand why America didn't launch. That's why it didn't launch, and I've got it in black and white.
Well, I can tell you that I sat in Don Engen's office, who at the time of the USS Liberty attack was the captain of the American. He told me some interesting things. He apologized. He said, "You tell the crew, I really have always wanted to apologize to them for launching second. They were in the middle of a general quarters drill, and they had all the wrong aircraft, all the wrong arms up on deck."
No, that's wrong.
Well, that's what he told me.
I know.
I'm just telling you what he said. He said they had planes going down the up elevators and coming up the down elevators, and he finally got them ready and to launch. And just like McNamara told Tully to recall the aircraft because he didn't want
That was
any
the Secretary
incident.
of State, right, McNamara?
Robert McNamara ordered the planes back from the Saratoga, and Tully recalled them. When they got to the America, when they finally launched, and they advised Washington that they had launched, McNamara ordered them back. And before Captain Engen, before Don Engen could say anything, Comp 6 Fleet, who was standing right next to him, took the mic and said, according to Don Engen, "Sonny, you're neither big enough or bad enough to order me to recall jet aircraft when I have sailors' lives in jeopardy. They're going." And it was right after that Lyndon Baines Johnson got on the Voice Network and pretty much told him if he didn't recall the aircraft, he would be selling pencils tomorrow. So they recalled.
Right. Well,
but that had to be an interesting exchange.
Yeah. Well, when
I've had that confirmed by also the corpsman that took care of me on the America. Said it was crazy when we knew that in America, we didn't know who you were, but what's the Liberty? Well, we were attached to the Sixth Fleet. We signed on to the Sixth Fleet when we came through, and then we went and did what we do. We at the time, independent duty. We moved way away from
on the 7th. On the 7th, when you guys asked for a destroyer escort,
we were denied.
Admiral Martin was cruising towards Gibraltar. He had no idea what the hell was going on because everything we were doing was by light, light signals. Okay, I was aviation wing, and if we had been at general quarters when that happened, I wouldn't have been able to be doing what I was doing because I was coming down from the berthing compartment, heading for the mess deck. I got halfway through, and we got to call the general quarters, and they told us to be prepared for an NBC attack.
Yeah.
As soon as I got 10 or 15 feet farther ahead, the Marine that was guarding the nukes locked and loaded and says, "Can you ride the brakes?" I go, "Yeah." I go up in the cockpit and I asked him, I said, "You think the Russians have missed us by 5 miles?" And he says, "No." So I says, "How long do you think we've got if they catch us moving this damn thing onto an elevator?" And we talked about it. We decided about 5 minutes. That's what we figured our life was worth.
Well, I wanted to ask. I heard that sailors were actually shot at while they were in the water trying to get on rafts. Is that correct?
No. None of our men ever hit the water, but the life rafts did. Whether they were thrown in by our guys or whether they fell in because the restraints were shot up by the jets and also by the machine guns on the torpedo boats, rafts only went into the water. And the torpedo boats went around the ship machine gunning the rafts.
How many fatalities? How many injuries?
Damn near, almost everybody was injured. 34 men was the final count. And I know of at least 2 guys that died over the next 3 or 4 years, definitely within the next 10 years from their wounds. They wouldn't have died normally. They spent the rest of the time, and even Doc. A lot of the guys that have died recently really died from their wounds.
34 initial fatalities, then more over time. Right.
I think it was 171 were wounded, is what I looked up as, which was most. How many people were on the ship, a total?
It would be close by looking at how many Purple Hearts were issued, but I'm sure somebody deserved it and didn't get one. So it's got to be at least 1 or 2 that never got what they should have been awarded. So, but yeah, 34. I think it was 9 guys? Was it 9 topside? And then that torpedo took out the rest. It was
how many
something
people
like that.
were on the USS Liberty? About 200?
Less than 300.
Right.
And
what was it, guys? It was.
And
I'm thinking about 270 something.
294.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to ask a question: is how long did the attack, take place for? Like, how long was it from the start of the torpedo to the last shots being fired?
If you asked even the guys that were on the bridge that lived that question, and I'd be interested to hear what you two guys, Ron and Phil, what you all say, because my experience has been that in any kind of a firefight, guys that I know came back from Vietnam, unless there's somebody that's not involved in it watching it, nobody has a real idea how long it lasts. You'll hear anything from a few minutes to a couple of hours. And I'm not even sure officially they've ever come out.
When you have your adrenaline's all pumped up, you're fearing for your life, and you're just trying to survive. I hear these kind of stories. People, they end up fighting for literally days on end. Especially like in the World War II, this would happen. People would be fighting for days on end, and nobody would even know it's been days. People would think it was just a couple hours.
I tried to call the Skype of Ron. Haven't been able to get through to him yet. We have George and we have not Phil. Who's the other gentleman here?
No, Ron's apparently here. Ron's, according to this list, I don't know if he's just been quiet or he's not online. Like right now, he's not on the mic, but he is here according to the participant list right now.
So right now we have George and who else?
We have Joe, we have George, and we have another Joe, right? Don't we have Joe? We have Lentini and last name Joe. The one was on the flotilla.
Okay.
I thought he was here,
sure.
wasn't he?
I'm not sure, but how long did the attack last? It lasted from, there was an announcement. We had, just to put it in perspective, we had a general quarters drill. And the captain, when it was secured, praised us. Said, you guys did everything fast. We sent Zebra. That is, we made the ship watertight in record time. But we're going to keep doing this because we are off of a war zone. And we're, it'd be prudent to just keep working at it, so we will. Then he said, and you can see the smoke from some of the fighting. And then he secured from general quarters, and a lot of the guys ran and got their cameras and went topside to see this smoke from the fighting and take pictures. And then they announced they were going to test the engine on the whaleboat, the one that they used to take enlisted guys from the ship to shore if we were anchored out. They announced they were going to test it. What they did was it's up on chocks, and the propeller is in the air, and so they warn you to stand clear of that area because the prop is going to be spinning. Nothing like a prop to cut your head off. So they announced that. And then they announced photographer to the bridge. Nobody knew why, but it turns out it was because they had recorded these surface craft and these high-speed aircraft coming over them, and all of them coming straight for the ship, and the planes were approaching. The next thing we heard down inside that ship was a ping, 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 and it turned out it was the cannon shooting across the deck. But down inside, not thinking anything like we're about to be attacked. I mean, we're not part of the war. We're in international waters. We're flying the flag. We're not armed to fight. All the reasons that we shouldn't have been attacked. Down inside, we all thought that somehow that boat had slipped off its chocks and the blade was skipping across the deck, and we hoped nobody was hurt. And the next thing we heard was the officer of the deck up there on the loudspeaker, the 1MC, General Quarters, this is no drill. The ship is under attack. General Quarters, man your battle station. I mean, it was really a shocker. And then we hear rockets hit and the kabooms and the cannon fire. And it was one of the rockets that saved my life. The concussion opened up my leg, and I went out into space and sat down to get my leg bandaged. And that was exactly when the torpedo entered at the deck level and blew a 30 by 35 foot hole below the waterline and killed all my men. But that was the kind of day we had. And I don't think, even up on the bridge, if there's log entries, I will bet you, if you looked at them for when they were in there, when they were put in after the fact.
How did it make you feel, the gag order, that so many of your fellow sailors were ordered not to speak?
They were.
But how did that make it worse for you? You know, coming home and or being intimidated or not being able to speak out.
Well, as I said, they never said that to me. I never had that wonderful experience.
So you had no faith in the media, right? Because you knew if you tried to speak to the media that they'd probably cover it up, right?
I have faith in them. I just don't think they did their job. I mean, it didn't take much to show that was everything that we heard was false. It didn't take much. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the record, the history, there's a report and they show a message to prove what they're claiming, trying to cover their backside. There's supposedly a message that was sent out ordering us to pull several hundred miles offshore to move away, but we never got it. And so it wasn't their fault we got hit. You know, what they're meaning NSA's fault. I can tell you, I can make up a message with a date-time group that shows anything you want, last week, last month, 10 years ago, and make it look real. What they told people was it got misrouted and to several shore stations, and that was why we didn't get it until way after the attack. So we did not move, and that's why we were there, and that's how we got attacked. And it wasn't the powers that were in charge of our ship's fault. Let me tell you something, gentlemen. That message was never sent. In order to send a ship a message at sea, general service message that type, you had to know what fleet it was attached to, and everybody knew we were now attached to the 6th Fleet. It would go to a comm center that served the 6th Fleet, and all the messages of all precedents would be sent out again and again and again on a dozen different frequencies to ensure that every ship in the fleet got the message. It wasn't just sent to the USS Liberty, it was sent to the fleet, and every ship in the fleet would have gotten it, and some lowly seaman would have been looking at it and ripping it off and putting it in a burn bag because it wasn't for their ship. Just like one of our seamen would have been looking at ours and saying, oh, here's something for the Liberty. Chief, here. Chief would say, hey, Lieutenant, here. They'd go up and get Captain here. That's exactly how that would have worked. And they claim they sent that thing and it went all over the world. That never happened, and it wouldn't have happened with a little basic understanding of shipboard communications. I can tell you they're lying. That was a cover your backside after the fact.
I
So
wanted
that's
to
another little
address
piece
something.
of history that nobody's ever paid attention to.
I wanted to ask a big question. I've been kind of eager to, ask this question because I heard about this. Is Operation Cyanide, I think was the name of the. I think apparently there was a Russian ship that had showed up at the scene of the USS Liberty attack and apparently had done a part in stopping Israel from continuing their fire on the USS Liberty. And it was I think it was a Russian destroyer that showed up. I forgot what was the type of ship that showed up, and I was going to ask George because he was talking about that, about the Russian fleet that was there. If you knew about that.
Well, that was another one. But I saw that. That was a destroyer, I think. I believe its number was 714.
Well, it was not on site when the America got there. 2 days later? It wasn't on site.
No,
and nothing was ever said about it until years later. Somebody came up with this story, and personally, I'm a little skeptical.
Well, how long was it before they rescued you?
The America.
Within 24 hours.
We should have been there in 9 hours. We apparently never got the order to go to flank speed.
Yeah.
So we didn't get there. We didn't get there for 18 hours.
Yeah,
and,
that's about right.
Davis was the first one that came in.
Yeah.
And then the I forget what the name of the second destroyer was, and then the Little Rock came in. But
because it was the Davis that highlined a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of the other one. Gives me an M. Anyway, the Russian ships they were all over the fleet. We had 3 of them that were tag teaming us to the point where we warned them, you keep it up and we're going to cut you in half. Basically, that was the message. And and the next day I wrote a letter home to my parents and I explained what the ship looked like. And I still couldn't believe it was the Israelis. I mean, some pitch country like Israel, I still believe the Russians had something to do with it. And I hope those damn Russians do cut in front of us again.
There was an interesting comment from multiple America crew people while I was on board, getting put back together where they knew I was going to live before the air evac me off. And the comments were the same. Before the general quarters, the real, this is no drill, general quarters, where the fleet came around to protect the carrier so that the carrier could launch. By the time those ships got around, according to these, the first class, corpsman, 2 doctors, and an enlisted guy, all said basically the same thing. By the time the ships got around to protect the America, the only ship visible, the only nationality visible on the net from that ship was American. Nobody knew what was going on, and everybody got over the horizon.
Yeah, they took off like a bat out of hell.
Yeah. I never heard, while I was waiting to be airlifted off by a helicopter once the America got there, I never heard anybody say there's a Russian ship out there. That story about cyanide, that came up years later, and I don't even know who started it. I've never been able to track it down as being accurate. If there was such a thing, it's still classified because I can't find anything on it other than what a couple of writers have written.
Well, on the DVD, Loss of Liberty, whoever was doing the interview asked the Israeli head of security at the time about Operation Cyanide,
Yeah.
I thought the guy was going to take a dump in his pants. He started backing up away from the desk, and he said, "We can't talk about that." You know.
I'd like to see that. I would love to see that because I didn't see that. I'd love to see that.
That's
this thing has changed. You know, it's changed all of our lives. You realize that, right? Every one of us off that ship, our life has changed. Some for the better and some for the worse.
Yeah,
every one of us.
I'm surprised you didn't get the warning about keeping quiet. When you guys started coming on board, I was on the flight deck, and I don't know how I got there or why I was there, but I was standing in front at the head of a slow stretcher, and there was a kid with battle dressing around his head, and he had a gray ooze coming through it, about 2 inches behind his right ear. And there was a guy in civilian clothes, and he's telling him, you don't talk to your shipmates, you don't talk to your family, you don't talk to your friends, and you don't talk to the guy at the bar about what happened.
I guess they would have put me in jail because I would have looked at him and told him F you.
and then he goes, oh, you get court-martialed or worse. And he looks up at me and he says, you got that? And I don't know what I said, yes, sir, or yeah. But he scared the hell out of me. And and then he goes, and stay away, or don't talk to the press. Because we had 30 journalists on there when this was going on. And I thought, okay, that's the end of it. Wrong.
Yeah,
2 hours later, I go into my workshop, and I walk in. Everybody else walks out, except for the petty officer in charge. And Phil looks at me and says, you steer clear of the press. And he turns around and walks out of the room. Okay. And
they didn't want
I had no idea what happened.
They didn't want Israel blamed. It's too easy to poke holes in the story. Takes about 15 minutes. I do a PowerPoint presentation, and the people reach their own conclusion. I don't comment on anything other than facts. And unless somebody asks me what I think, everything you've said indicates that the whole story was made up. Yes, that's true. You got it. And if it was made up, then it must have been a deliberate attack. You got it. But they missed me. I had a compound fracture of my left leg, broken ribs, collapsed lung, fractured skull, and the most I ever hurt was riding in that darn helicopter over to the America. That vibration hurt. But once they got me there, I went into, I guess the same day, I went into surgery. They got my leg, and they couldn't close the wound completely. And what was it? Pete, the doctor, Flynn.
Oh, Dr. Flynn.
Yeah, he came in, and, well, sailor, how are you doing? Well, sir, he says, don't call me sir, call me, I thought it was Pete. At any rate, he hands me a washcloth, and he says, I'm going to change your dressing. You might want to bite down on this. Well, I was doing 100 push-ups and 200 sit-ups, and I was a first-class CT, and I was rough and tough and hard to bluff, so I said, I don't need that. He said, okay, I'm going to pull this gauze out of there. He says, I'm going to pull this gauze out of there on the count of 3, and he got to 2, and he pulled it. And I tell people, it felt like somebody took a blowtorch to my leg. I didn't scream, but I came so damn close, it was pitiful, and my eyes watered up, and I had to look away. And from that moment on, every time he came on the ward, it was a standing joke. When he got to my bunk, I had that washcloth between my teeth. He says, man, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm not stupid.
Well, I'm glad we got to see it.
They missed me, man. However they did it, they missed me, and they evacuated me out to Hampton Roads, I guess, to Little Creek. What was it? Little Creek, the Naval Hospital there in that area. And from there, I went to Norfolk, took training to be an instructor, and went to Pensacola as a naval instructor. And it wasn't until the Pueblo incident happened, and I went over to the hospital, and I asked the head orthopedic surgeon, do I qualify for a medical? He says, put yourself in the hospital Monday morning.
Are you talking about Puebla, Mexico?
Do what?
The Puebla
No,
incident?
it's the Puebla, the submarine, right?
No, the Pueblo was another ship like ours, smaller, even less armament, and it was taken by the North Koreans. And you can still go aboard her as a sightseeing thing because our guys never slipped in there and blew it up. That should have been done a long time ago. But the North Koreans took the Pueblo. And the guys, if you check your facts, you'll find that the captain and the enlisted guys that were on that ship, it wasn't a big crew, but they were beat with 2x4s. They were fed the rotten food for over a year. And every day, the commander, Booker, told me, he said, every day they'd bring the officers out and line them up. They'd bring the enlisted out and line them up, and then they'd bring me out, put me on my knees in front of them, put a gun to my head, and pull the trigger. Every single day. He said it bothered me at first, but it got to the point where I was numb.
So they'd shoot near his head. Were they ever released? I mean, they were released.
Yeah. The politicians got them out after a year of that crap. Now, they had been told before they ever set sail that if they ever had a problem, the fleet would be there in minutes. Nobody ever came.
Yeah, one of the pilots I served with, by the name of Bob Violet, tried to do a rescue, same as our squadron did on you guys, and they called him back. He was flying an F-8 Crusader, and they pulled him back, and he's still hopping mad about it.
Oh, they had CTs, the equivalent of the spooks that were on board the Liberty and the Pueblo, in the air, and they knew what was going on. And typical thing that happened, along with the fact that they were left out to dry, they had 2 Marine linguists on board that were supposed to be Korean linguists. When things got rough and it was obvious they were going to be boarded by the Koreans, Pete called these 2 linguists up onto the bridge, and they said, "Captain, we don't know what they're saying. Yeah, we went to school for Korean, but it was several years ago, and we've never spoken it since. I'm sorry, sir." So, well, if you can't do anything useful, get the hell off my bridge. and he had no way to communicate, and one of the guys got shot in the backside when they came through the door of the comm center. And if Booker had done anything else, they would have all been shot. And then we left them, we politicians left those guys in a North Korean prison for, I think it was a little over a year. And then they walked across that bridge, what is it, Panmunjom, whatever it is. They walked across the bridge and were released finally. And they were all messed up. Every one of them was messed up. And still are, just like our guys.
We have about 20 minutes left of the show, and
Chris, did your father serve in Korea?
Yeah, he did.
Not mine.
No, mine. He did in the DMZ back in the 80s. But I mean, we can go into many stories about that. But it's like I feel like what happens oftentimes, and what my dad has told me about his experience there is that sometimes the United States government just sets up soldiers as pawns. As Kissinger said, that they say that sometimes the people are set as pawns, as Kissinger just called pawns to be used in foreign policy soldiers, and that they don't care what the soldiers would die, and they put them in situations sometimes for them to intentionally be attacked, like they were at DMZ.
he said that soldiers
like on the
are dumb,
DMZ, they put him in a
stupid
position that was very
bastards used as pawns. So he was very insulting, Kissinger, to soldiers.
Let me give your listeners and you guys another thought. If a non-commissioned officer, an NCO, puts his people at undue risk and shows a lack of care for their care and well-being, he can be stripped of rank and thrown in prison or shot. If an officer shows a lack of concern for the care and well-being of the men and women under his command and shows a blatant disregard for their safety, he's stripped of rank, put in prison, or shot, depending on the situation. The commander-in-chief was heard by many people, and it's been documented, to say, I don't care if the ship and all hands go down, I will not embarrass Israel. And he got by with it, and he should have been called for it.
You got away with
President of the United States said that.
He was probably involved in killing JFK as well. I mean, Johnson was probably one of our worst presidents ever.
Yep.
All right, the one I would like to get.
I've always said I wouldn't be. I'm not a theorist, and I don't run around with all these different theories. But it would not surprise me, since I lived through Lyndon Johnson's reign, to find out somehow, some way, that he had something to do with taking over the presidency. It would not surprise me in the slightest.
Join the crowd.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the Universal Code of Military Justice, Article 90, about unlawful orders. I'd like to dig up McCain's father and have him tried and hung, even though he's embalmed, because he definitely ordered the cover up, and there's no question about it.
McCain, when he was captured in Vietnam, immediately snitched on his comrades, and he was treated better than the other prisoners because his father was an admiral. I mean, this is the McCain we're talking about today, right? I mean, McCain's going around to Libya, to Syria, supporting all these terrorists. I mean, this is what America's become today. It's really sad, and the American people need to become aware of these things.
We are the most decorated unit, the USS Liberty is, from the Medal of Honor down. Most decorated unit. And yet, only by accident are any of our citations worded about who did the attacking. We were fighting an enemy. And that's the other, and it's a funny thing that it doesn't spell out that it was an attack, that we were injured in an attack by Israel, but it does say things like, they use words like enemy, an enemy attack. And it wasn't until recently, I believe the Silver Star that was just given out talks about the state of Israel being the attacker. But all of our citations, they refer to things like it's an enemy attack, because otherwise it was friendly fire, and you're not entitled to those things. And you don't get a Silver Star for friendly fire.
Yeah, so I guess for friendly fire, I thought it only referred to like when it's your same army, but it could also be from an ally that accidentally shoots at you, right?
Yeah. Your ally's on hill A and you're on hill B. It's nighttime and suddenly you're on A, and you see something and you shoot at it. They shoot back and you have a firefight. People die. It's friendly fire, and there's not Purple Hearts involved in that.
Right.
But all of our citations refer to enemy, an enemy, or that it's a war issue. And I've been told that Silver Star that was just issued actually talks about Israel.
That should be all over the news. There's a cover up even till today. Media is
because over the years, the people that write this stuff up have forgotten the story, whether it's Israelis or Americans. they don't remember what the storyline is, and I guess they figure they don't worry about it because nobody else does. But while we're still living, a lot of us remember.
And we'll continue to let people know, the new generations, the truth about
Yeah.
history of what Israel's doing and how it's in many ways continuing today. Chris, you want to add anything? We got about 10 minutes left for the show.
Yeah, I wanted to add the fact that that it just will continue and continue and continue until somebody I'm going to say it outright that it will be one day there's going to be probably a Middle Eastern country, maybe Iran, will eventually get into a conflict with Israel. It'll be ugly, but Israel will not come out of the conflict. And I don't think that, a lot of people around the world, including myself, I'll feel bad for the citizens that are killed in that conflict
Well, I think the
in
United
Israel,
States
but not,
will be in a
not that the
situation
state
where
of Israel itself will fall apart.
Right,
And it's
and
going
the
to
United
happen,
States-
but until that happens, Israel's going to continue doing genocide against the Palestinians like they did last summer, like they did back in 2008-09, use chemical weapons against the Palestinians,
Right.
and have done ever since 1948. It started with a genocide and a massacre. 750,000 Palestinians were forced to leave their homes or killed in 1948. They call it the Catastrophe Day in Palestine. It's a holiday of tragedy that they have there because of Israel, and it's been a history of genocide. The genocidal state, and the truth about it needs to be revealed.
Absolutely, and I think that if Pakistan, Iran, some nation has a nuclear attack against Israel, I think by then, if that scenario happens, the United States will be in a situation where it won't defend Israel. It'll be fed up with Israel's provoking, and Israel will be left on its own. And then Israeli state would be destroyed and be replaced with something else, and hopefully with a society of equals, where the Jews would continue to live as a minority, and the Muslims and the Christians would be able to return to Palestine.
Well, they're segregated, they're humiliated. They are, in Palestine, they have worse than Jim Crow law segregation, and they have Nazi-style eugenics when it comes to sterilization of African Jews that are women. They sterilize them, and the sterilization really resembles the T4 eugenics program by the Nazi Germany. But,
We're talking about Ethiopian Jews.
It's for a different show, but we could tell you all. I mean, it would take a long time to describe the history. I might do it one day about, that they're actually not opposite at all, and there's a lot of connections. But we have a guest today, and I want them to get some last words out because we only have this show cuts off around a few minutes before 10, and like 2 minutes before 10 it cuts off, and then
you mean 11? 11.
I mean 11. Yeah, I'm still think we're back at stable. I think it's 11.
Well, if any of your listeners want a real history lesson, feel free to pass my contact information on. Because I'm right ready anytime to go to any group, whether it's a church group or a school group or a man's club or whatever.
We'll give out his first and last name and email. Do you use email, sir?
Yes, I do.
All right, please provide your email and your first and last name for listeners if they want to contact you. This will be up on YouTube soon.
Okay, and write it down so that you got it if they need it. It's my last name, Lentini, Lentini, period, Joseph, Joseph, @gmail.com.
Okay, George, you want to have any last words as well, or info if you want?
I just got a quick question. Joe, did you see the Maricopa newspaper article?
On what?
On the Liberty?
I guess the answer is no, I didn't. I'd love to see it.
Okay, I will send it to you. I'll send it to you. And I'll also send you the thing went through the American Legion and VFW here, and I actually got a thank you from the VFW Adjutant General at their headquarters. So I'll send that to you too.
Yeah, please, because I'm a life member of every one of those organizations.
Okay. Another thing, my city, we just put out a proclamation recognizing the Liberty.
Ooh, I'd like to see that too.
Okay, I'll start doing some digging and see if I can get it all to you.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Just remember the liberty, guys. You out there in Radio Land, remember the liberty.
We want to thank you for your bravery of speaking out and your perseverance all these years, having survived such a tragic thing and still being able to speak out. Anybody who's gone through traumatic things is hard to speak of, even with the passing of time. And we really commend your bravery of speaking out on our radio program. And we'll make sure as many people as possible will hear it. And we apologize for the technical difficulties earlier, but really respect and want to honor you guys and your contribution to the program, to our new program.
Well, thanks for putting it out there.
And as the host, I thank you as well. And thanks for the courage you must take to talk about such a horror that that was the USS Liberty. I know it must be hard to talk about that that tragic event and to talk about in being told. I know that they told you many times not to speak out, but to have the courage to speak out and expose what Israel did that day, because very few people know about the United States, about that Israel attacked the United States. More people know outside of the United States that Israel attacked the United States on June 8th, 1967. And now we're talking about 5 decades later, and just now some Americans are starting to wake up. But thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to do it, my friend.
And we are conspiracy realists, not theorists. And we feel that some conspiracy theorists out there cherry pick and say things that are inaccurate, but we try to get the truth out. And conspiracies are out there, and there's ulterior motives behind these things. And when you see that, when present conflicts come up, you can see the ulterior motives as well when you realize that. We saw what happened in Libya, we saw what happened in Syria. You just got to, and especially if you've gone through something like you guys have gone through, it opens your eyes to these ulterior motives that's going on, all these policies and all these events that are happening,
When it comes to the USS Liberty, we don't have to make stuff up. We really don't.
Yeah.
Because everything that I say and everything that we talk about, we can document. We can document it in U.S. records. We can document it in foreign records. We can document it in Israeli records. So we don't have to have a theory.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just they don't want to admit it. That is, this country, for political reasons, doesn't want to get on their case about it. They never did. And at this point, I don't know what difference it would make if somebody came out at the White House and said, we finally realized that the USS Liberty was deliberately attacked by Israel, by all those people are dead, and it won't happen again, and blah, 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 and they kiss it off. So what difference would it make? Other than to realize how they are when it's strictly for the state of Israel. So, anyway, thanks for having us.
It's like about a year ago, I got into an argument with this super Zionist guy, and the weird thing is that, it's like I wish I'd still have the contact information. I got rid of it because I didn't want to. I forgot his name because I didn't want to think about this scumbag. But this scumbag was trying to say that the people on the USS Liberty was their fault and that Israel rightfully attacked. I wish I could have brought them on and made him face the actual survivors. And,
even Israel doesn't claim a 13-mile limit. We were in international waters.
Absolutely. When the flotilla was boarded, it was in international waters. That if Somalia had done that, it'd be declared an act of piracy. But because it was Israel, they claimed they were defending themselves. And that was a humanitarian flotilla. Your vessel wasn't armed either. I mean, people really need to look at the facts here and realize there's ulterior motives behind these things.
The facts are out there. All they have to do is do a little computer search these days.
Palestinians can't even fish in their own waters in Gaza,
Hey, we're in the last minute of the show, just saying. So
all right,
we have to
be done. Go ahead, Chris.
Up. Yeah, the music's going to be starting soon. I might have to thank everybody who tuned in, everybody who showed up to the show. Thanks for coming on the show. It was an honor having you on the show. And it ended up being great, even though we had the early technical difficulties. But I'm going to thank everybody for tuning in to Stabled Radio. Music's going to be kicking on in less than a minute. And Al, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I got 10:58 over here. Closing thoughts. Like I said, something needs to be done. Getting the word out, speaking with gentlemen like these is part of it. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, we didn't really get to ask them about that, but I'm sure they're supportive of that. I personally believe, we talked about this before, Chris, on the program, a two-state towards a one-state, but let's get behind the anti-Zionism. Thank you.
Okay, guys, thank you, and bye, y'all. I'm pushing the disconnect button. Bye-bye.
Sayanim, how have you been? I think we're gonna need your help again. Remember the passports from Britain, my friend? We need 20 more from Saudi and Yemen. What is coming is big and it is gonna sell. Much bigger than the King David Hotel. America's military should never say that. We are the bomb when we dress like the Arabs. You